So from the private view on sustainability to how a destination and a tourism body is thinking about it, we are pleased to welcome Thien Kwee, who's the CEO of Sentosa Development Corporation, to her first WiT. Kwee, please join me on stage. Thank you. Thank you for coming all the way from Sentosa for our panel.
It's actually very near.
I know. I
5
found
minutes
out during this period and visited Sentosa a lot.
Thank you.
So you can see the discussion was pretty heated. It's one of the biggest quandaries facing the private sector, right? I mean, they want to do it, but at the same time, there are businesses that are struggling, the small businesses at this time. So how, they don't have the means to do it, the small businesses. So how can they get involved in this? How can they participate?
Yeah. I think just now quite a number of points already raised, right? So we talk about the fact that there's urgency, and also the pandemic really brings to home the point that actually crisis preparedness is very important. And on the topic like climate change, actually government, businesses, individuals have a big role to play to come together. So I think the question is not about, when is a good time. In fact, some of them say, why not yesterday? So I think if you break down in terms of sustainability, ultimately is how do you go about doing things perhaps in a more thoughtful manner? So if that's the proposition, then actually there's no better time but now. And if you look at how businesses, they are suffering and all that, but sometimes on agendas like that, where it's, to me, it's equivalent to talent development, it's equivalent to governance. Do you postpone that to another day? Perhaps not. All right. So I think maybe it's not gotten to that level, but I foresee sustainability as an agenda will go that direction, and all leaders would have to own that agenda. So that's first entire bucket. And I think the discussion around how customers have also been, have heightened awareness about this topic and making quite concrete choices about sustainable options. So sustainability is not just about dealing with climate change. Obviously, that's a big topic, but it's about survival, it's about relevance, it's about sustainable business for our trade.
Right.
So I think it's business sustainability as well. So it's that two parts.
So it's like really, I mean, out of COVID, it was already happening, but I guess COVID accelerated, right? So the different forces are all kind of converging now to create this sort of perfect environment, where businesses need to treat sustainability like talent development, like governance. It needs to be there, right? Yeah. And in a way, I mean, Sentosa, is kind of a ideal little pilot to really test that. And I know that you unveiled your roadmap to achieve the goal one, which is carbon neutrality by 2030, right? Yeah. And you have also set up what is the Sentosa Carbon Neutral Network, which is an alliance comprising 17 founding members. And that alliance has the potential to reduce carbon emissions by up to 30% compared to 2019 baselines. How difficult was it to cobble that alliance together of different businesses and say, this is one common goal that we're all get to? Yeah.
I think SDC, since its formation, I think because we have the stewardship of the whole island, sustainability has been one of the key tenets. But what is the difference now is how do we play a role in terms of galvanizing and also play the role of a pathfinder for the island community? Because I think you rightly pointed out, some of these complex issues, actually acting individually has its limitations. I think all of us wants to do good, but sometimes there are that limitation. So the concept there is really how do we leverage the collective strengths and being able to drive through economies of scale and also precinct level solutions, and also sharing knowledge and networks on this particular topic, because essentially I don't see competition in an agenda like that. In fact, because it's such a new space, there's a lot of learning in terms of new technologies, new regulations. What do you do? Where are the learnings? By coming together, actually, it's far better than acting individually. So I think that's really the concept of how we want to use the Sentosa Carbon Neutral Network. Essentially, that is the first carbon neutrality focused business alliance to drive that change towards Sentosa's goal.
Yeah, so it's the power of collaboration, isn't it? It's
exactly.
Like example of this WiT working with, GAFME, working with Marina Bay Sands, working with All Seats at Expo to kind of create a new model that might actually show an impact that reduces carbon footprint, right, in an events industry. So I attended your media briefing.
Thank you.
I did all my homework, and I heard Christina Tan, who's the owner of the Ola Beach Club, and she said she's found it really useful. A small business like hers can have access to local sourcing and local efficiencies in joint procurements, right? Because before it was hard for her. But her challenge was actually customer facing, because she said when she tried to remove straws, she got loads of complaints from Singaporeans. So how will SDC bring consumers on board?
Yeah, I think in all matters, there will be a spectrum of consumers, right? So we have seen very proactive consumers who are fully supportive of this agenda, and in fact asking us, why aren't you doing more? Holding us accountable. So that's one spectrum. And then the other spectrum, maybe they're a little bit more inertia, in moving in that direction. But on a topic like straws, actually, I think if you could make it no straws by default, right? But if you really need it for whatever reasons, I think maybe we could make available that. I think just by that move, you would have cut, the disposable by a significant level. So I don't think it's just a black and white, no means no, and I think the same with plastic bags. I think the option is given, but you pay a little bit more so that there's also choices and awareness. That means the next time, I have to pay for it, I better remember to bring a bag along, So I think that is one dimension. And what we believe is businesses do have a role to drive change in habits of the consumer. And that's why we think by moving in that direction, we are able to effect some change in a positive manner. So one of the key initiatives of the Sentosa Carbon Neutral Network essentially is to look into a framework on how do we reduce disposables by 2022. I think that is a collective effort by the entire consortium, and hopefully we are able to move along in that direction in a more impactful manner in the months and years ahead.
Okay, so you got targets for almost everything that you're doing.
We hope.
KPIs. Okay.
We hope.
Another area is harnessing renewable energy, solar, tidal, and waste to energy generation. And you aim to become a zero waste precinct, right? As well as
in support of Singapore's ambition. Yeah.
Okay. As well as generate sufficient renewable energy annually to offset the emissions of approximately 300,000 hotel room nights. That's in your press release. So I understand that you're testing tidal turbines on Sentosa. What are the results so far, and how does that impact marine life on the island?
Yeah, so I think the focus around renewable energy is an important one for us. I think it's really towards the reduction in our reliance on fossil fuels. So we are, I think there was mention about brownfield sites being more difficult and limited land on the island. That's why we are exploring all possibilities, including solar and also tidal. Tidal essentially, we are looking at how the flow of the tide can give us more predictable and also efficient energy that is weather, it's not dependent on the weather, and it's also not dependent on the time of the day. So I think we have started trials on that. It will be a bit more time that we need before we are able to find out how impactful that solution can be deployed to allow us to meet our needs. Okay. So give it a bit of time. Yeah.
Okay, you got a lot on your plate. But goal number 2 is you want to be certified by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council as a sustainable destination by your Golden Jubilee year next year, 2022, right? And one way to achieve this is through sustainable tourism offerings. So can you name one example of such an experience that you went on personally, and what did you learn from that experience?
There are quite a number. Of course, some are still work in progress being developed, and I think we are seeking to launch a series of signature tours showcasing our brown heritage, the blue heritage, and also the green heritage towards the end of this year. So personally, I had the benefit of joining a tour which the Barracks Hotel specially curated for their guests. So, you know, Barracks Hotel on the island, in case you guys have not seen it, I think it's a beautiful, property that the Far East organization has transformed, because it's a cluster of conserved buildings, and it's also served as a old parade square for the British military troops in the earlier days. So they actually work with the heritage specialist Jerome Lim to curate a heritage tour. Of course, it's to talk about the surroundings, but I think what is special is actually they have worked with 2 army veterans who used to live on the island, and now telling the stories of what happened then, and really bringing the consumers along to really imagine what was life like during the time when that property was being used as an army barracks. So I particularly enjoyed that.
Sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So I Googled the GSTC Sustainable Destinations Map, and I grabbed this screenshot, and I basically focus on APAC, right? And among them are, there's Australia, there's Thredbo and Rottnest Island, which is EarthCheck certified. There's, in Singapore is Resorts World Sentosa. And then in China is Mount Huangshan. And then in New Zealand, it's Kaikoura, I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but the district council. So this month, you got the good news that along with Niseko Town in Japan and Margaret River in Australia, Sentosa is among the 2021 top 100 sustainable stories by Green Destinations, right? So how does getting such recognition, you think, impact tourism to Sentosa? Like, is it important to get those badges? Do you think customers are actually looking for those?
I think a couple of angles there, because first of all, I think because the team that I have been adopting some of these practices, and to get a recognition, I think is really a sign of encouragement for them. So that to me, for my organization, I'm really pleased. And obviously, this being one of the global certification in line with GSTC, what it means for us is that it is a relevant and also referenceable guide to hold us accountable, to the best practices, and we have some sense about where we stand. It also sets us on a path of continuous learning and improvement. So I think from that context, I think it's a very valuable exercise, and I think we are doing what we can to continue on that path. Even today, when we look at some of the searches and aggregator platforms, they are using some of these certifications in order to filter destinations for guests, because guests are seeking, just now we talk about a lack of information. I was listening. So I think the direction is going to go towards that, and we just need to be ready, and depending on the benefits of that, yeah.
So in coming up with your blueprint, right, to really develop a sustainable tourism destination, were there any destinations that you looked at as best practice, and say that's the way we wish to go, maybe a bit of it?
I think there should be a lot of players that we could learn from, but I thought a good start is to use a certification process to help us look at the individual items. Sometimes it's not so apparent. So wildlife management, how do you reduce your emission? How do you look at disposable? How do you look at waste? Sometimes it's not so visible, and people don't have the awareness. So I see that process as giving us that. And also it gives credibility and accountability to the tourism establishments that wants to participate in that.
Right.
So, yeah.
You know, I mean, we've had some pretty good news during the pandemic, even though it's been quite bad for inbound tourism, right? But in September, Penang Hill was recognized as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. And that's the third in Malaysia after Tasik Chini and Crocker Range, right? So do you think more destinations in Southeast Asia going for this kind of recognition will lift the whole region as a whole, you know, in terms of offering premium experiences?
I do think so, because I've always enjoyed traveling around Southeast Asia. And I'm sure a lot of guests coming to this part of the world enjoys the tropical climate, the beaches, and also a lot of the historical sites. So certainly it will raise the awareness of a lot of guests. Maybe in the past it was not part of their consideration set, but now, because of that recognition, more will come, and it will give the uplift to the tourism in this region. And I think one of the good things about UNESCO is also how they also looked at how do you protect the local communities and not result in over-tourism. So I think these are dimensions that will be quite important as we move ahead. So on Sentosa, we also, as we develop over the years, in fact, we are celebrating our Jubilee 50 years next year. We have actually taken pains to look at how we preserve our heritage and our biodiversity, even as we have undergone many rounds of development. And you look at some of the hoteliers, they've done beautiful properties on the island, Capella, barracks and so on and so forth, and also how we have taken pains to look at in a pipeline of sustainability-related themed tours that we hope to introduce to our guests in the coming months.
Actually, it's interesting. Like, I feel like as a local living in Singapore, I feel like Sentosa has kind of taken on a new shine during this pandemic, because we've all had nowhere to go, but Sentosa was the beach, right? And so prior to the pandemic, you received 19 million visitors, 80% of whom were international, and now you've gone fully local. How much of the business you think is left after, because a lot of businesses suffered, right? How much of the local ecosystem is left when the inbound travelers return?
I think we have been, obviously the pandemic has been difficult for the island. I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. But we take pride that we have had a strong support of the locals to sustain many of the businesses on the island. And the businesses, to be fair to them, I think many of them stood up to the challenge, whether adjusting their products, adjusting their pricing, coming up with innovative ways to engage the guests. So I think that has been something good for us, and it's precious that something for us to sustain and that deep engagement for us to retain even in the years ahead. So I foresee, we've been able to double our local visitorship during this pandemic. It is our wish that we can retain more of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes back, right now, I mean, before pandemic, it was 80-20. So you hope that you can raise the local population.
Yeah, that's
okay.
right. Yeah.
I actually think that Sentosa is a way stronger product now with the experiences that are available. Okay, rapid fire, all right? What's the biggest personal lifestyle change you've made to become a more environmentally friendly consumer?
Yeah. Actually, I wouldn't say, okay, it's perhaps big on a personal level, but obviously a lot of people, they'll say, in the whole grand scheme of things, but I do believe some of these actions are important to support the country and the society and the community and the business to move in that direction. So for me, I think it's very simply that I do all the groceries for my family, so I will bring all my bags there instead of the plastic bags. I think in the past, if I don't, per trip, they could give me up to 10 bags. I can imagine how many consumers are there visiting NTUC and Cold Storage. How many bags are there per day? And everyone, if we do it otherwise, and how much savings that can be. Yeah.
Okay. What's been the biggest silver lining to the pandemic for you?
There are two dimensions. One, I feel that it's a more connected society. And in this context of our tourism sector, it's a greater engagement and deeper understanding of locals to the business that we are in. And I think it ought to be that way. And I always felt that tourism is not only for tourists. I mean, it's really, it has to be well loved by the locals. Okay. And the second thing is, I think it's been a test of resilience, and organizations in our sector hopefully benefited from it, even though it's been difficult. So whether they are more agile, they are more innovative to respond to challenges.
Thank you. Thank you. Please join me in thanking Kwee. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.